One of the things I hear a lot from beginning flow creators is that they struggle with drawing because they don't know how to build up their artwork. How can you shade your drawing? What's the proper order of things? Do you recognize these struggles? You're not the only one. So I had to come up with a solution because I don't want to leave flow creators hanging, of course. I went back to the Flow Lab and researched for days, weeks, no months. I experimented, did field research, held interviews, and used deep meditation techniques to come up with a method that will help you draw. And I found it. I created a way for you to always remember what to do in which order when drawing, so you don't miss any steps. And we are going to apply it right away by drawing this apple. Let me break down these very easy steps. You always start with form. And form is about shape, it's about size, it's about color, and even about texture. And then after form comes lighting. So that's highlights, it's a shadow, and also reflections. But the most important part when following these steps is observation. You can't draw anything without properly observing first the form and then the lighting. And how can you remember all this? Form, lighting, and observation, the Flo Method. Let's get started. Oh, and don't forget to follow me at Patreon. I have this fun landscape painting tutorial waiting there for you. You can see how the basic form, the basic shape of an apple is a circle. You can find simple shapes like squares, triangles, and circles in all the objects around you. And breaking your subject down like this is always the first step. It'll help you break down even the most complicated subjects. Now let's start with our first step. When drawing, I would always advise to start out with a sketch. Sketching is really about exploring the shapes. So let's go ahead and sketch out the shape of our apple. Now to draw our apple, we're working on a canvas that is 2500 pixels by 2500 pixels, and Procreate has a lot of nice sketching brushes. I would like to use the 6B pencil, which you can find under sketching. And for your sketch, you can simply pick black. If you double tap here at the bottom, you'll grab black, but it can also be a dark gray or whatever color you like actually. Now for this brush, I have the opacity set to 100% and the size at 50. And remember how we saw a circle as the basic shape of an apple. So we need to sketch out a circle. And when you sketch, you can make multiple lines on top of each other. And with sketching, you're trying to find that average lines where you're making a lot of lines and then eventually you will get an average line in between those messy lines. So we have a rough little circle, but of course when you look at an apple, the top is a little bit more flat. So you can sketch that in. You don't have to erase anything. We can just sketch on top. And we have a little like indent at the bottom. So a little indent there, just sketch on top. And here we have a little line where we have that stem. So you can just make a little semicircle here. And then for that stem, we have a curved line and a little oval here at the top for the top of the stem, and then another curved line downward. And then the leaf, we'll add a little leaf that's like two curved lines attached to each other. Very basic shape. Now you can see that we have a lot of messy lines in our sketch, but that will help when we create our lines. We will be able to find the average line. Pick our favorite one. Now the great thing with Procreate is that you can always easily adjust your sketch. For instance, I think it could be a little bit bigger. We can just go to the Move and Transform tool. That's the little arrow up here. And then when you set it to uniform, you can use these handles to make your sketch bigger or smaller, move it around. I'll place it about here and then tap the arrow again. And now it's time to move on to the next step, and that's adding the crisp lines. Now this is a step I only go through for stylized illustrations, because in reality, of course, objects around you don't have an outline. So if you are going for realism, then you don't need an outline. You can just go straight into adding flat colors and then painting on top of those. But we are starting out really simple with this exercise, so we are going to add line art. Now to do that, first you need to lower the opacity of this sketch. We'll go to the layer menu and then tap the N, and then use the slider and set it to around 30%. Then we'll tap the plus for a new layer, and then we'll grab another brush. We'll go to the calligraphy brushes and grab the monoline brush. And for the color, let's grab this one. That's the third color in the first row of our color palette, which of course you can find linked in the description. Now the opacity of the brush is at 100% and the size is at 30. And of course, what you can do in the line art phase is just go over your sketch and follow your lines and trace it like that, and finding your average line. But I got a neat little Procreate trick I'd like to show you for this illustration. We are going to draw a circle first. Just draw a circle, then hold your pen in place to make it snap to the quick shape, and you can tap one finger on the screen for a perfectly round circle. Now we are going to make sure that our circle is in the exact center of our canvas by going to the arrow, the Move and Transform tool, then go to Snapping and turn on Snapping, and turn off Magnetics, and then move it until you see that vertical orange line. So that's over here. Then we'll go to the wrench, then to Canvas, then we'll turn on Drawing Guide, then we'll go to Edit Drawing Guide, and then we'll set it to Symmetry. So with Symmetry, whatever you do on one side of the canvas, it'll also happen on the other side of the canvas. Let's tap Done. And then when you go to your layer, you will see that it's assisted, and that means that that symmetry is turned on. Now we'll go to the magic wand and then to liquify. And you need to set liquify to push with distortion and momentum set to none. I have pressure to max, and with the size you can play around. Now we can use this brush and we can push and pull, and we can shape our apple. We can push this down and make it follow our sketch a bit more, and it'll be nicely symmetrical since we are using that symmetry tool. Now for this little part, we need to make the brush a little bit smaller, perhaps 30%, but you can just experiment with that. You can go a little bit bigger, maybe 45. You can push a little to create this area. So now we have created a super slick outline. Let's tap the magic wand again and again. And now we need the lines for the stem, for this little curve, and for our leaf. I'd like to use another brush. We'll go back to the brushes and grab the script brush. And the script brush, it gets thicker as you push harder and thinner as you push lightly. Let me make the brush a little bit bigger to demonstrate. If you push hard, it'll be thick, and if you press lightly, it'll be thin. But of course, that only works if you are using a pen that has pressure sensitivity like the Apple Pencil. Now the opacity of this brush should be at 100%, and for the size, we'll set it to 12%. Now let's first go in here and create that curve. Let's start at the center, then move outward, and then press lightly as you move to the outside. So the middle of the line will be a bit thicker and the outer end will be thinner. Then on a separate layer, let's create our stem. Let's go to the layer menu and then tap the plus. And then let's follow our sketch line. Now, of course, you can rotate your canvas to make it easier to create this curve. Then the other one. And then this little oval here. Now let's make sure that the bottom part is attached. Otherwise it'll be open, and when we want to fill our shapes with color, it'll spill out. So we need to attach these two parts to make sure that the shape is closed. Now let's make our leaf on a separate layer in between our stem and the apple. So first tap the apple, then tap the plus. And then for our leaf, let's grab a different color for our line art. Let's grab this one, third color in the second row. And then we'll use our sketch to find the perfect line, the average line that we need. And let's also add some leaf veins. We can make a curved line over this leaf. And you don't have to make it touch the end. And then some veins like this. And then the other side. And one over here. Now we have all the lines. We no longer need our sketch. So you can go to the layer menu and either turn that off or remove it completely. Now we no longer need our vertical line for our symmetry. So let's just go to the wrench, then to canvas and turn that off. And then let's move on to the next step. Form isn't just about shape, but also about size, color, texture, etc. All the physical properties of the subject you are trying to draw. In this stage, we are going to add the base colors of our apple. So at this stage, there's no need to think about anything else. So don't think about texture, light, and shadow. Just lay down a simple base color for your subject. So in this case, that's red for our apple and green for the leaf and brown for the stem. To do that, we will make new layers underneath our line art. First, go to layer 1 where we have our turned off sketch layer. Then let's tap the plus. And then let's first add the base color for our apple. First, tap the layer with the lines of the apple and then set it to reference. Now we can go to this layer and drop in the color. The base color for our apple will be this one, first color in the first row. And you can simply drag it onto your apple. Then let's do the same for the stem and for the leaf. We need to make a layer on top of the line art of our apple. Let's tap the plus. Then let's tap the leaf and use reference for this layer now. Then go back to this layer, grab a green color, this one, first color in the second row, and drag it into the leaf. Then finally, we need to do the same for our stem. So we'll make a layer on top of our leaf. Let's tap the plus, then tap this line art stem layer, set it to reference, then go back to this layer, then grab this color over here, fourth color in the first row, and drag it on here. And then for the top part, let's pick this color, fifth color in the first row, and drag that in as well. So when it comes to the F of form of the Flo method, we have our shape, we have the size, we have the color. At this stage, you could also add texture if you're going for a realistic look. But for a stylized apple, we pretty much have everything we need. So now we have arrived at the L of the Flo method, lighting. It's where observation comes into play again, of course. It's a great exercise to just look at objects around you in everyday life and observe how they are affected by light. Something that is very textured, for instance, will have way different highlights than something that is really shiny. So just look at how light and how it hits a surface of an object is affected by its texture. Just thinking about this, observing this in everyday life is super helpful. Now for our apple, we are first going to add a soft global light. First, you need to decide where the light is coming from. This is a purely fictional apple, so we can put the light source wherever we want. And I'm just going to put it here. Light is going to hit the apple from this side. So to highlight, the global highlight should be here. Now to do that, we are first going to turn off reference on this top layer. Otherwise, we won't be able to fill any shapes. It'll only look at this stem shape. So let's turn that off. Then go to our base color layer of our apple, then tap the plus. And I will tap this new layer and set it to clipping mask. So whatever we draw or paint here, it'll only show up on our apple shape. Then for our color, we are going to grab this one, second color in the first row. And now let's think about that light. I think it's hitting about here. Just a shape like this. And drag in the color. You can see it's hitting the top part of the apple. Here we have that little like indent. There's a little like crater in our apple, so there will be shadow there. Light won't be able to reach it that easily, but this top part will get hit by light. So I think this shape looks good. Now we are going to soften it. We'll go to the magic wand and then to Gaussian blur, and then just slide to the right on your screen with your pen or your finger until it looks nice and soft. Let's go for 20% and then tap the magic wand again. Where there is light, there is also shadow. So opposite from the light, where the light is hitting, we will have a form shadow. So that's the shadow that appears on the form itself, on our object. Let's make a new layer for that. We'll tap the plus and we'll set this layer to clipping mask as well. And then for our color, we'll grab this one, fourth color in the first row. So now we'll make a shape that is opposite from our light. So something like this. It's okay if it's wobbly. Make sure that it's closed and drag in the color. Then let's go to the magic wand, to Gaussian blur and slide to the right. And let's go for 25%. Then tap the magic wand again. And then let's add some shadow to this area. Let's just follow that edge here. Now let's make a little shape like this. Then let's rotate this. And now I want to blur this edge as well, but I don't want this bottom part to be blurred. I don't want it to go over that edge. So let's make use of a selection. If you go to the S shaped ribbon, that's the selection tool, and set it to freehand, just make sure that color fill here is turned off. It shouldn't be blue, it should be white like this. Then let's make a selection of this area by just going along that edge here, then loop around, close it, maybe make it a little bit bigger. Just something like this. You can just add extra selection areas. And now when you have a selection active, you can only paint or blur or erase inside of that selection. So if we go to the magic wand now and then to Gaussian blur and we slide to the right, it'll only blur that area. But as you can see, you still get a little light edge here. So what we'll do is we'll go to this little triangle while we have Gaussian blur back at 0, then tap pencil, then go to your brushes and grab a soft brush under airbrushing. Let's make that brush a bit smaller, 5%. The opacity is at 60. Now we can go over this edge like this with multiple strokes. And then you can use your finger to lower the amount of blur. So you could go for 13%, for instance. And you can adjust it a little bit more with the brush. And then you don't get that light edge at the bottom. Then you can just tap the magic wand again and also the S shaped ribbon. And now you have a nice crisp edge at the bottom, and here it's nice and soft. Now with the soft global light and that soft shadow, our apple doesn't look shiny yet. The thing that makes an object look shiny are the specular highlights, the crisp edged bright highlights. So we are going to add those now. Let's grab a different color. Let's use this one, second color in the third row. And let's make another layer. Let's tap the plus, set it to clipping mask, and then let's grab our script brush again under calligraphy, and then we'll make like an oval shape here, a bit like a bean shape, and another one next to it. Then drag in the color. And we can also add some smaller little highlights, perhaps some here, and a little highlight edge along this area where the light is hitting. So you need these highlights on the left side since we have decided that the light is coming from this direction. Now they are super crisp. I want to blur them just a little bit. So let's go to the magic wand, then to Gaussian blur, and then slide to the right, just slightly, maybe 3%, and then tap the magic wand again. Now we can blur these big ones even more by using the smudge tool. That's the little finger up here. And we can go to the painting brushes. We have them over here. And let's use the acrylic brush. Let's lower the opacity or the strength of this smudge tool. Let's set it to 40%. And the size, we can set that to 15. Then when you go in here, you can just go along that shape and just blur it slightly at the edges. It also gives a little bit of a suggestion of texture on the apple. Just go with the direction of the apple. So it's like a curve. Follow the shape. So now we have a nice shiny apple. Let's do the same for our leaf and for our stem. Let's start with our stem. Let's go to this layer, then tap the plus for a new layer on top. We'll set that layer to clipping mask. And then we'll grab this light color, 5th color in the first row. And let's just add a little bit of a highlight over here at the top. The stem doesn't need much. Let's add a shape like this. Then we'll go to the magic wand and to Gaussian blur and slide to the right. Let's go for 12%. Now let's tap the magic wand again and grab a nice color for a brighter highlight. This one, 4th color in the 3rd row. And let's go in here and just add a few smaller highlights for an extra little touch. Then for our leaf, let's go to our leaf layer over here. Let's tap the plus, then set this layer to clipping mask. And let's start with our shadow this time. Let's grab this color, 3rd color in the 2nd row. And let's think about where some shadow would be. This leaf is bulging a little bit. So these parts are coming towards the viewer a little bit, and this is curved to the back a little bit. So we can make a shape like this. And drop in the color. And then blur that. Let's go to the magic wand and to Gaussian blur and slide to the right. Maybe even a bit more, something like this. 12%, then tap the magic wand again, and then make another layer for the highlights. Let's tap the plus, set this new layer to clipping mask, and then grab this light color, 2nd color in the 2nd row. Now we'll have some light on these areas. This is bulging a little bit. And these areas as well. Just make some shapes like this. And now let's blur these. So we'll go to the magic wand and to Gaussian blur, slide to the right. And I think this looks nice. That's at 9%. Then for some shiny highlights, let's tap the plus for another layer. And for the color, we'll grab this one, 3rd color in the 3rd row. And let's just add some shiny highlights here as well. Just along those edges. And perhaps one here. And you can go back to the smudge tool if you want to smudge them a little bit. Let's make the brush a little bit smaller, 7%. And just drag this a little bit just to make them slightly softer. Now I mentioned that this shadow is the form shadow. That's the dark part, the dark side of an object, and it's the opposite of the area where the light is hitting the object. But there's also a drop shadow. So we have the form shadow on the object, and the drop shadow is the shadow that that object is casting on the underground or on another object because it's blocking the light. So in this case, when the light is coming from the top, there will be a drop shadow underneath our apple. So we need to make that drop shadow on a layer underneath our apple. By the way, if you want to save layer space, then you can merge layers that you are happy with. Just don't merge them with the line art layers yet. So just merge the color layers. Then at the bottom, go to layer 1. That's our turned off sketch layer. Then tap the plus. And then for a color, let's grab this one. First color in the third row. And then let's make an oval shape like this. Hold your pen in place. And then you can tap ellipse at the top if you want to adjust it a little bit. And then drag in the color. Then you can go to the magic wand and to Gaussian blur to blur this drop shadow a bit, make it a bit softer. Add like 9% and then tap the magic wand again. And let's also make a more reddish drop shadow because the color of that apple, it'll reflect on the surface around it. So adding some warmth there would be nice. Let's make a layer underneath this one. First we'll tap layer 1, then tap the plus. Then for the color, let's grab this one. Fourth color in the first row. And let's make another oval shape. Hold your pen in place. Then tap ellipse. You can change it a bit. Move it around. Go for something like this and then drop in the color. Then go to the magic wand, to Gaussian blur, slide to the right, to 16% for example, and then you can still adjust it under the move and transform tool. Set it to freeform so you can change the ratio a bit and nicely align it with the other shadow. Then once you're happy, you can merge these two shadow layers together and just notice how this drop shadow is pretty close to the apple. That will make it look like it's really on the surface. Let's go to the move and transform tool. Let me just show you, if you place it too far away from the apple, it'll look as if it's floating. So again, observation is key here. Just look around you at everyday objects and look how drop shadows look. How close are they to the subject? How big are they? What color do they have? So you can practice drawing even when you're not drawing. So let's just undo this. Let's tap the arrow and then tap with 2 fingers. And then let's go to our final step, which is adding some final touches. A nice extra touch you can give to your illustration is making the line art blend a bit more. So we are going to adjust the colors of the line art a bit. Now you can do that by going to this line art layer, for example, of the apple. Let's turn off drawing assist here since we don't need symmetry. And tap it again and turn on alpha lock. And then let's grab a soft brush under airbrushing. And for our color, let's grab this one, the base color of the apple. First color in the first row. And let's go over the area where we have the light and make those lines a little bit lighter, a little bit more red. So it blends a bit more with the color, with our main color of the apple. And let's do the same for our leaf. Let's go to the line art layer of the leaf, tap it, turn on alpha lock, then grab the base color of the leaf, the first color in the second row, and go over the top area where the light is hitting to make those lines a little bit lighter. Another nice extra touch is adding a secondary light source to give your subject a rim light. It'll really nicely make it pop. Now we are going to add that on the apple on a separate layer. So first tap the colored layer here, then tap the plus and set that layer to clipping mask. And then we'll tap the N That's the layer blending mode, and we'll set it to screen, which is a great layer blending mode if you want to add highlights to your subject. And then for your brush, you can go to the painting brushes and use the acrylic brush. Then let's add a blue secondary light source. We'll use this fourth color in the second row. Now the opacity of this brush is at 100%, and let's set the size to perhaps 10%. And let's paint on the outside along that edge. Add a nice little rim light. And there might also be some light bouncing from the table, from the surface, back up to the apple, adding a little bit of light to the bottom here. And let's make that red. Let's go for the fifth color in the second row. So that's not the secondary light source, but that's the light bouncing up from the surface. So let's go along the bottom here. Just along the edge. And then we can blur this slightly. We can go to the magic wand and to Gaussian blur and slide to the right. Very minimal. Let's go for 5%. And then finally, let's do the same for our leaf. Let's go to our leaf layer here, tap the plus, set this to clipping mask, and then set the layer blending mode to screen. Now this is especially important when you have added a lot of texture to your illustration. When you use screen, you can add light without ruining any of your texture. Then let's grab the blue again, fourth color in the second row, and let's add a little bit of that secondary light to this edge here. And then let's blur that as well. Let's go to the magic wand and to Gaussian blur and slide to the right just slightly, and then tap the magic wand again. And that's how you can easily break a subject down with the Flo method. So just start out with the form, which is shape, size, color, texture. And once you have that, start adding the lighting and shading. And overall, just keep observing. Just like you can observe this next tutorial, which I think is a perfect fit for you. And don't forget to share your result. I would love to see it. And then I will see you next time for the next tutorial. Thank you for watching.